For free. You're a family man, you know. Actually, you're the first dad on the podcast.
Hey.
So that's the new thing for me.
Yeah. I'm happy to be the first dad here.
Yeah, dude. So I'll do my intros.
Okay.
And then we'll just kind of dive in. I might reference my phone, but I think I remember the topics that we'll do. But I just want to make sure we stay on tap. So, hey everyone, welcome to the Steve Walter Photo Podcast titled Everything is Art. And I throw the little graphics up. Boom.
Yeah, nice.
First, I just wanted to start off by giving a shout out to my buddy Tom. Tom's the guy who makes the intro music for me.
Oh, okay.
So Tom is an incredible musician, and I've mentioned it before, but you can find him on iTunes, you can find him on Spotify, like anywhere you get music, you can find him.
It's a good person to have.
Oh yeah, dude, he's great, and he's just such a creative guy too, and he's just a funny guy. Mm-hmm. He'll be on the podcast, so people will eventually know who Tom is. The world needs to know, but he's Tom Lavery. Search for him, download his stuff, or just stream his stuff, whatever. He also has a viral video out. He was in a viral video, and it was so random. He was featured on Jimmy Kimmel, so that's how you know it's legit.
Oh wow! Yeah, he's big time.
He was it's the dumpster fire. There was a dumpster fire during like the St. Patty's Day parade in New Haven.
Okay.
4 years ago, something like that, and he took a video. And he was doing like a selfie video of the dumpster fire, and someone joined him, and he was filming the firefighters putting out a dumpster fire, and one of the firefighters put the hose right on him and drenched him, dude.
While he was doing a selfie
video. So it was hilarious.
Oh, man.
So that kind of made its way around. So Tom, sorry, Tom. I just remembered that. So yeah, Tom, go look for Tom.
Yeah.
I also want to give a shout out to my Patreon sponsor. So if you're not familiar with Patreon, or if you're not familiar with Patreon, as my buddy Mike Falzone has said, it is a tipping and rewards website. So basically, it's a way for you to help support what I'm doing.
Gotcha.
So I want to give a shout out to Zach and Melissa for supporting me and doing this. You guys are helping fund what I'm doing, right? I mean, it's a great thing to be able to create content, but then it's an even better thing kind of knowing that people really enjoy it. And they say, yeah, I like what you're doing here. I want you to keep doing that.
Right.
So this podcast is free for anyone to download. But what I do is we're going to do a photo shoot afterwards. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do an editing on those photos, right? So that's kind of behind the scenes stuff.
Right.
And those are the things that for the rewards, right? If you pay a certain amount, on the Patreon page, you get access to that content.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily for everyone, but for those that say, hey, yeah, I do find value in that and I want access to that, give that to me.
Patronize the podcast.
Patronize the podcast, man. To kind of help. And we were just talking about it, right? That sustainability of all of this stuff is that this takes time, it takes energy, it takes money.
All right.
So being able to have you guys help me is fantastic. So if you guys wanted to contribute, it is patreon.com/SteveWalterPhoto. You throw the little lower third down there, then people can access that.
Go ahead and click on that.
So now that we've done our intros, right?
Yes.
My name is Steve. Your name. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Devon.
My name is Devon Minnis. I'm a portrait and wedding photographer from Waterbury, Connecticut.
Waterbury, we were talking about. There's a bunch of old buildings that no one's doing anything with up in Waterbury.
And they should be, because they're doing awesome things here in New Haven, Connecticut, and I wish they had those awesome things in Waterbury. So
yeah, New Haven has cool stuff going on. Bridgeport has some cool stuff going on. Where else? Middletown. Doesn't Middletown have a cool studio?
Middletown is awesome. I love Middletown.
Is Middletown near Waterbury?
Middletown is maybe 30 minutes away from Waterbury, but yes, they do have an awesome studio that a lot of you guys probably are familiar with. I think it's Studio 52.
52, 53, 52. You're right.
Studio 52, something like that. In Middletown, Connecticut. Awesome studio.
Have you shot there before?
I've shot there before with Matt at Vision.
Matt at Vision, yep.
Yeah, that was my first time, my first and only time there. But yeah, that studio was pretty nice.
Cool. Yeah, I want to go up there. I haven't had obviously having my own studio, there's not much of a reason to go up there, but at the same time, that studio is designed very differently from mine, right? It's a much bigger, wider open space, nice big white walls, right? Concrete, that kind of thing.
Got awesome light coming in. There's kind of like an upstairs balcony.
Oh, cool.
So if you wanted to
shoot down, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
nice.
That would be pretty cool. But the upstairs is more like a changing room. I'm assuming that's what they're using it for. There's couches and stuff up there.
Cool.
But if you did want to get some top down shots.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
That is cool. And is that a space that, I'm just kind of asking you, you're like, I don't run the place, but is that a space that you that they have it outfitted to do just rentals? Or is it just a guy who has a space kind of like me and he just happens to rent
I
it?
remember going on their website one time and, just looking up pricing. And it just seems like that you're just using that for studio rentals.
Just studio rental. Yeah, that's cool. There's a guy up in Hartford that has a really nice space. I forget his name. same kind of thing. But it's cool that, I mean, to knowing that those spaces are available.
Yeah.
I kind of humored the idea as far as doing that here, but then I realized, no, this is more of my own private space.
Yeah, you don't want everyone in here.
No, I don't want everyone in here. I want you in here right now, but not just like randomly. I'm not going to give someone a key, or even if I did, like I'd have to be like all that stuff. So I'm just not set up to do that. No, not at all.
The person that runs that, I'm sure that's probably like the only thing that they do at the time, you know?
Right.
Is studio rentals.
You're just doing that. So with that, you said you're a portrait and wedding photographer. Do you do a lot of studio work with your portrait work? Or do you like it?
I started out shooting studio.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
So when I first got into digital photography, you know, I built my own like home studio. I had like the 4x12 seamless backdrop.
Yep.
I had an Alien B.
Yep.
Softbox. And I started learning light first. And then kind of the same situation. It was like I wanted to shoot with more people, but I didn't want everyone in my house.
Yes.
So I started going out and, you know, working on natural light photography.
Yes.
But yeah, I did learn a lot from studio lighting. And then like as I grew like as a photographer, I started like downsizing as much as possible.
Isn't that funny how that happens?
Yeah.
You kind of start with this big
I bought everything
thing.
at first. Like I bought like a backdrop, I bought a studio light, I bought speed lights, I bought 2 cameras, I bought 4 speed lights, I bought everything. And then like as I grew as a photographer, I was like, what can I like start getting rid of?
You just start simplifying things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting that happens, or that can happen, right? Is that you think you need all this stuff to be whatever it is you envision, but you realize it's like, no, I just need practice. You need practice.
And then you're like, I don't want to carry all this stuff to my shoots.
Nope.
So I was like, let me figure out what lens I need to accomplish what I need to accomplish. Just bring that.
Yes.
Let me figure out what camera I need to accomplish what I need to accomplish, and just bring that. And then I fell in love with like natural light.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I learned studio lighting, because studio lighting also helped me understand how to use natural light.
All right, so I want to talk about that, because there's a pet peeve of mine that when people say that term, natural light photographer, when people say, hey, I'm a natural light photographer, all I hear someone saying is, I don't know how to use flash.
All right.
Like, and I don't say that to be mean, but if you're a photographer, you'll just say, I'm a photographer. And I can use flash when I need to use flash. I use natural light when I need to use natural light. I'll use these fluorescents when I need to. So it's, in my mind, when you label yourself as that, for me, someone who knows natural light, we're all natural light photographers.
Right.
I mean, my mom is a natural light photographer, right? Like, she has an iPhone, she takes pictures. Well, natural light, or call it available light, right? But it's interesting that you say that, right? You've kind of spent more time saying, well, I actually want to just utilize natural light, because you know flash, right? So you saying I'm a natural light photographer does not mean you don't know flash, because you know flash. So that's interesting for me, because I haven't really encountered that.
And there's a lot of times where you need to use flash photography. I'm not totally against flash photography, but there's times where there's situations where I have to implement flash photography to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish.
You have to.
Or the look that I'm trying to go for. As a wedding photographer, I'm sure you know, at a reception, you can't just shoot.
Nope. It's pitch black.
Yeah, absolutely.
The DJ does not give you any good lighting.
Right. Yeah. He works against you all the time.
Always. Or even when you're in a hotel, a dark hotel room. Sometimes there's a nice window, right? But sometimes there isn't.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you go in there, right? Again, thinking about like moms, they're like, you want me to turn on the lights? You're like, no, turn off all the lights. Let me open up these curtains. That's all I need. So it's just funny that, but you're right. You sometimes need just a little bit of fill light, and you need to know, hey, if I'm doing on-camera bounce flash, or if I'm setting up in a reception, how do you normally set up your reception lighting? Do you do off-camera on stands, or are you bouncing, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it depends on what the reception gives you. Sometimes if there's like, low ceilings, they're white ceilings, I'll bounce right off the ceiling. Yeah.
Every time. It's going to look beautiful.
But it's funny though, because the first wedding that I ever shot, and I'm glad I ran into this situation, I walked into the reception, it was all wood ceilings.
Oh, that's
yeah, and it like crushed my heart. I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? But luckily, when I started, I bought like all the equipment in the world.
So you had it all, right?
Yeah. So I set up 4 light stands in each corner of the room.
I was gonna say, you could just blast the floor with light.
Yeah, I just blasted the floor with light.
Which is good.
But I'm glad I ran into that situation early on in my career, because now it's like, I can go into the worst of any situation and know what I need to do. And
I think that's more of my point, or just more of why I want to teach people lighting too, right? So I have workshops. I host lighting workshops, because what I've encountered a lot of times is people will say, I'm a natural light photographer. So like I said, okay, you don't know how to use flash. Well, typically what I found is people don't know how to use Flash because they're intimidated by it because they think it's way complex, and it's really not. Like, it's not that hard. It's just this.
It can get complex.
It can, depending upon what you're photographing, right? But as simple as bouncing a light off of a ceiling and knowing, like, hey, I need more light. Okay, let me bounce more light. Or, well, what happens when I adjust my ISO and I don't adjust my flash? Like, okay, well, my flash is still more powerful, but wait, why? And it's like understanding that kind of thing.
Right.
So in a simple way, one light, one camera, done, right?
Right.
But once you start saying, well, okay, I want to do a studio shoot, and I want to be able to shoot a portrait at 7 o'clock at night, and it's not the summer, what do I do? Well, you got to know how to use light. So it's more to my point to say, like, hey, I'm going to use light when it makes sense. But if there's beautiful available light, I'm going to use that. Like I have a little light set up right here, but that's just because this side is a little bit too dark. Because the rim light that's coming in on us right now, the light on you looks awesome. It looks great. Yeah. So I'm going to use that.
Right.
But this side's a little dark, so I want to make sure people can see us. So you fill it in a little bit.
And I do the same thing on shoots too. Like, I always bring a 5-in-1 reflector with me, and I'll diffuse light if I need to diffuse light.
Yeah.
I'll fill in light if I need to fill in light.
Yeah.
I'll use just available light if I like how that looks.
Totally.
I'll work with shadows if that's what I'm going for.
Totally. That's refreshing to hear. I mean, it's good to hear that, right? Because then, in my mind, it's like you're a photographer.
All right.
Like you use the tools, you craft the light the way you need to get the shot that you want.
And that's why you should explore like all aspects of photography, because it makes you a more well-rounded photographer. So that when you start fine-tuning what you want to do, you're able to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
So
because you kind of have all of that background
you
kind
covered
of
all
thought
your
process.
bases.
Yeah. So how long have you been shooting weddings for?
6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my 6th year in wedding photography.
Cool. And I imagine you work with a second shooter?
I do.
Okay. Is that someone that you have as like a go-to person?
At first it was just a friend of mine that was interested in photography. He used to come with me to like every single wedding.
Yeah.
Like the first 3 years of my wedding photography. And then he became a police officer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Shift gears big time there. Huh?
Yeah. So he's a police officer now. So he doesn't come with me to every wedding. Started bringing my wife with me to weddings.
Oh, yeah.
You know, cheaper to bring her.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I started bringing my wife with me to weddings. And I just like having her there sometimes too, because she sees things as a woman that I don't naturally see as a guy. You know, just fixing like flyaways in a girl's hair, you know, fluffing her dress.
Yeah.
Making sure her bouquet looks nice.
Yeah.
Things like that. So she was really awesome to have.
The attention to detail stuff.
Yes.
And that's something else that I've noticed that I see that doesn't happen as often as I would like, this attention to detail. When you see people posting these images, you know, I think Instagram.
Right.
You scroll through someone's feed and you look at stuff, and then you see this little distraction, and I'm like, if you just moved like 2 inches over, you could have hid that, but you didn't. And it's like, I get it, you get wrapped up in the moment, especially on a wedding day when it's go. But sometimes you need to breathe and just kind of look and say, ooh, hold on, let's just move over here. Boom. And it's nice when you have that communication with a couple and it's like, hey, I'm not being weird. Like, I have an attention to detail. Like, it's a neuroses, sure, but it's going to make your pictures look better.
Absolutely.
So it's having that attention to detail. So it's great that she comes along with you. Yeah. That's cool. And then plus just hanging out with your wife, right? Like your best friend is shooting with you. It's
Absolutely.
like, yeah, cool.
It's awesome.
And economically, like, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
So it's just, hey, all of this is coming towards us, right? Because it's a business, right? Yeah. And even that in itself. So previously I had Robert Norman on the podcast most recently, and he's a wedding photographer. And he's been doing it for such a long time, right? I forget the exact amount of time that he said, but he's been shooting for, as he said, since the age of dinosaurs. That was his quote. But it's such a specific type of business, at least what I've found, right? Because while I shoot weddings, I wouldn't consider myself a wedding photographer. And I don't mean to say that in any kind of negative way, right? Because there are wedding photographers, and Robert is one that I would consider a wedding photographer, right? First and foremost. Would you consider yourself a wedding photographer?
Absolutely. That's how I started out. When I first started taking photography professionally, the only person that I knew who was a photographer was a wedding photographer.
Okay, so that was kind of your intro, yeah?
Yeah. So I pay homage to him for helping me become a wedding photographer, because he was the only person that I had to look to ask for questions. Yeah. To second shoot with, to get my wedding photography experience.
That's huge.
And just learn how to make it a business.
Yep.
Because wedding photography is business first and foremost.
Yep. It is.
So I kind of got my feet wet with him. It's actually the person who shot my wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How funny is that? So can I share a story?
Yeah.
The guy who sort of became my mentor of sorts, Matt Branscombe, was the guy that shot my wedding.
Nice.
So he wasn't necessarily
funny how that works, right?
a wedding photographer mentor for me of sorts, but more of what I enjoy doing, the commercial aspect of photography. Right. So it's funny. He actually has a studio right down the hall from me, and that's how I learned about this space. So I was introduced to him. You know, I saw his work online, and he grew up in the same time I did, but we didn't really hang out. He's a couple years older than I am, and I came over here, we sat down, and I was like, yeah, I would love for you to shoot my wedding. Your work is beautiful. And he's like, yeah, you got nice work too. So we kind of just exchanged these pleasantries. Yeah. And by like the end of the conversation, he was like, hey, would you maybe be able to do some freelance stuff? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much. So he shoots my wedding, and then now I'm like best friends with the guy. Yeah. He works right down the hall. I've been doing second shooting with him for a while. He's just given me so many opportunities and just so much knowledge. Right. So Matt, thank you, because hopefully you're going to listen to this one. But I'm definitely going to have him on as well, because I want people to kind of hear his side. So that's cool that you have that person that kind of shows you the way, and then you realize, hey, you know what? I got this. Like, I can do this. And I think it's a good thing. And that was what was really cool about Matt, was that when I met him and I told him, hey, I'm looking for a studio space, he suggested, well, why don't you get a space in my building? And I was like, really? I was like, you sure, man? I was like, I don't want to step on toes. He's like, I don't give a shit. He's like, you get your work, I'll get my work. This is a private business. It's not like people are walking by looking for photographers. And I was like, that's really cool, man. Like that you're not like, oh, you're going to go do your own thing. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do my own thing. He encouraged me, because I met too many photographers that were just too secretive or wouldn't want to share, and just wouldn't want to kind of disclose or
elbows with each other.
Yeah, don't do that, man.
Yeah. It's good to teach, and it's good to learn, and I'm glad that I had a mentor that was able to teach, and I was able to learn from.
Yeah.
So I'm very appreciative his name is Richard EJ. He's out of New Haven, Connecticut.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cheeky Photography.
Cheeky Photography? Yeah, very cool, man.
Yeah, he's awesome. I learned a lot from him. He's very professional.
Yeah.
And he's been in the wedding photography industry for a very long time now. I don't know the exact number, but a lot longer than I've been.
Been around, so. Yeah. Probably similar to Robert. So like you said, it's a business, right?
Absolutely.
First and foremost, like photography, but more specifically, I think of like wedding or like, family portraits. It's a business, and the photography almost comes second, right?
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of photographers don't realize, because you kind of have this balance, right? Of your photography can be okay, but if you're really good at business, you're going to do well.
Right.
If your photography is amazing and you suck at business, you're not going to do very well.
Right.
If people don't know that you have this amazing work and you can't promote it, you can't market it, and you can't back it up, then people aren't going to hire you. But if your work 100%. Is good enough and you're out there, people are going to book you.
That's all it is.
It's so funny, because so many times you see that stuff and you're like, oh, this work is crap. It's like, yeah, well, they're doing something right, man. You can't hate on them if they're running a business well. So it is an interesting thing.
And it doesn't have to be just photography. That's with anything.
Oh, of course. And any kind of business, right? Yeah. Whatever you're running, like if you're not supporting it, if you're not promoting it, you're not marketing it, you're not going out and meeting people, then people don't know about you.
Right.
It's just like any artist, especially artists, right? Because that's what I found to be, the biggest thing is that artists naturally are not good business people.
Right.
They're just not.
And that's why they hire people to manage them.
That's why you hire a business manager, right? I kind of make the joke, my business manager is my wife, but that's the one who's kind of calling the shots. Like, hey, I'm going to do this. It's like, okay, are you getting paid? Yeah, I'm getting paid. I'm running the podcast,
and it's good to have that person to consult with too, because you'll probably make a ton of bad decisions if you didn't consult with someone first. Yes, and it's good to have that one readily available.
Yes, and even more recently, what I've encountered. So I've been doing more commercial work, and I've actually had conversations recently with an attorney. So now it's more of like the legality of things.
Right.
You get into things like licensing and agreements, all that kind of stuff, right? You need to have that stuff for a wedding photographer as well. But now I've kind of encountered more and more of that. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to consult an attorney, because you're going to know more about this than I do, and I want to make sure everything is where it should be.
You know what's funny? A funny situation about that is I remember I shot a wedding one time where the bride was a lawyer.
Oh,
and
interesting.
And she sent me a contract. And then I was like, you know what? I need to like redo my contract. So let me kind of talk to her to help redo my contract, because the contract that she sent me, I was like, damn.
It was good?
Yeah, it was
or
good.
just had everything kind of dialed in,
Yeah.
right?
She covered all her bases.
Sure.
And I was like, you know what? I need to cover all my bases.
Yes.
So that when I go into like these, weddings in the future,
Yes.
I have all my I's dotted and all my T's crossed.
And I think that's what separates a photographer from a professional photographer,
right,
is that kind of aspect. Not just getting paid, right? But it's having a proper contract, making sure everything's covered, and following up with emails, when you need to follow up, making sure people are getting paid, all of that stuff that kind of makes a professional or a business, right? And not to say anything bad about other people, but it seems like and Robert and I were kind of talking about this, when you kind of hop into photography, you're like, yo, I can make a couple bucks. By all means, make a couple bucks. But at the same time, make sure you're doing all of the crossing T's, dotting I's, all of that stuff that comes with it.
And that gives you the ability to charge more.
For sure. Yeah. Hey, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's a contract, sign this contract, we're all covered. And when someone says, hey, well, what does this mean? You go, oh, let me explain that to you.
Right.
And not just go, well, I don't know, I just grabbed it from the internet.
Yeah. And people kind of get that feeling too when they can see when you like have something that you just downloaded off the internet or
Yep. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And I've encountered that. I mean, even when my wife and I were renting our previous apartment, like the woman sent me our lease agreement and it was clearly copy and pasted.
Yeah.
Like, dude, to the point where there was a bottom paragraph and it basically showed it was just written completely wrong. And I could tell that it was copied and pasted literally because the font, the format of the font, and it was bold and it was a different style. And I was like, this doesn't match. You didn't even go through and align the font. Like it was 14 points instead of 12 points. Like just, and so I'm sitting there, I'm thinking,
you didn't
I'm
even
like,
type in my name where it says renter.
Yeah. And I'm like, you're a business, you're a professional, and this is a legally binding document. And if we went to court, the way it basically said was that if I was in breach, the names, what do you call it? The identifiers of who the leaser and the leasee was, right? They were reversed. So she forgot to invert them. So it basically said that they would pay me if I was in breach. I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. You need to fix this. She's like, oh yeah, we'll send it to the lawyer. Yeah, send it to the lawyer. So when you're shooting weddings, I know that this, again, came up with Robert, do you bring your film camera with you? Because I know that you've been shooting film lately, right?
I've been wanting to start.
Because you recently got, what was it, a 645 Pentax?
Pentax 645, yes.
That thing's a beast.
It is a beast.
That's like,
Feels
that
like
was,
a brick.
What was that? I think it was 2004, the last time they made that, if I'm not mistaken. Like, that's a fairly recent film camera, though.
Yeah. I don't remember the last time they made it. But yeah, I was interested in medium format cameras for a really long time in the aspects of film for printing purposes. Medium format grain versus 35 millimeter grain. It's a world of a difference. And yeah, I was saying that I've been purchasing film cameras throughout the years now so that I can create an online store. Well, throughout the year now. So that I can create an online store for film cameras. Just because I like the hunt of finding old film cameras.
It's cool.
Seeing if they work. Restoring them and then, hopefully being able to sell them.
Yeah.
Because
that's cool.
I see a resurgence of film photography.
Totally.
And I started out shooting film.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I remember that you said on the podcast one time, I can't remember what podcast episode it was, but you said that your dad was a photographer.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Same situation with me. My dad was a photographer. He wasn't a professional photographer, but
same. Yep.
He
just
was
an avid hobbyist.
Yeah. He was the family photographer.
Yep.
He didn't go anywhere without his camera. He still has it too. He still shoots with it. His Minolta.
That's awesome.
And I just appreciate going to my mom and dad's house and going through like boxes and boxes and boxes of photos.
It's so cool.
And it's funny because if you take a look at the photos from like when myself, my brother, and my sister, when we were younger to the age of like 12, we were so happy like when we were kids. And then by the time we were like 12, we were like, this guy with the camera again.
Oh yeah.
Like our faces like totally changed. Like by the time we got like 12, you know what I mean?
That's a real thing.
Yeah. And I kind of like hated photography for a really long time because of that reason. Like,
same.
My dad was like,
it was annoying,
always in our faces with the camera. And then he bought me a camera one time. I think I was like 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
He bought me, I think it was a Kodak. It was like a 110 millimeter camera.
Okay.
It looked like an ice cream sandwich.
Yep. Okay. I know what you're talking about.
It was one of those long ones, and then it had like the film advance lever right there on the top.
Yeah.
He bought me that camera, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And I kind of started falling in love with photography and with film photography. And then my wife, she bought me my first digital camera.
Oh.
Yeah, she bought me the Canon 7D.
Yeah. Oh, great camera.
Yeah.
What a great camera.
Yeah, when we got together. And our anniversary is September 5th, so that's where 9/5 photography comes from.
Oh.
Our anniversary.
And that kind of just works out that it's like 9 to 5. See, I thought it was 9 to 5 like a work day.
That's what everyone thought.
But, I mean, it makes sense. It kind of lends itself nicely there.
Right.
But it's, September 5th.
September 5th. Is our
Oh,
anniversary.
that's cool.
So it's kind of my thank you to her because she, like we were just talking about, she's kind of like my business manager. She told me like I needed to make photography a business.
Yeah.
Starting out.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did that because I kind of established myself as a brand first, as a company first. Now that that's going and that's flowing, I can kind of like work on the things that I want to work on.
Yes.
On the side because I kind of got frustrated with photography for a little while because it was like, all right, I'm not shooting unless I'm getting paid.
Yep.
And if I'm not shooting unless I'm getting paid, I'm not practicing.
Yep.
So I need to practice.
Oh, I love what you're saying right now.
Yeah. So I'm so happy that I established the business first, got that established, and then it's like, all right, let me start practicing more. Let me start working on projects. Let me start figuring out what I love aside from the business aspect of things.
Yes.
And I think as you grow as a photographer, you just start fine-tuning. You start fine-tuning. Start fine-tuning until you figure out what it is that you want to do, and then like all the creative stuff just starts flowing.
Yeah. I think that's natural for anyone that becomes attracted to photography. They shoot everything, right?
Right.
And then they start to go, no, this is kind of what I like right here. And to your point of, hey, I'm running a business, like I'm doing this, I'm getting paid. This is a business, right? Just like a plumber. A plumber's not going to go out and fix someone's pipes for fun.
Yeah.
That's not what they do.
Right.
They do that as a business. But it just so happens to be that your hobby, your passion is also your business, right? So there is that kind of trade-off of, yes, of course I want to shoot, but I kind of need to get paid. So when I don't know if you have this, but people will reach out and say, hey, I would love to do a shoot. And I say, I would love to do a shoot too. I'm only taking commission jobs right now. Like I'm not, I can't just shoot for free always, even though I want to do something creative. Typically, when I do that, I'll come up with a concept, I'll come up with an idea, and then I'll reach out and say, hey, I have this concept, this idea, are you available?
There you go.
And within the same respect though, if it's a model that I know is really good, really proficient, I'll ask, what are your rates? Because I know that you're going to be able to help me complete that vision.
Absolutely.
Versus if it's just a friend that I know I can say, hey, do you have some time? I want to experiment with some lighting ideas. I won't pay you, you won't pay me, and it'll just be an exchange of time.
You gotta know what you want to do, and then it has to benefit you in the same aspect.
For sure. Yeah. But at the same time, it's that creative outlet of I can't get bored with this stuff. Like I need to experiment. And maybe before I experiment on a bride or a groom, right? Let me grab this couple here, just some friends of mine. Like, hey guys, I have this idea of what I want to do for these kind of formal pictures. Like, let's just play with this.
And let me practice.
Yeah, and then you're practicing, and then you're kind of getting fueled, and then you're like, all right, cool. Come wedding day, now you're all amped up again because you have this new idea.
Yeah. Like professional basketball players don't just play in the game, they practice.
Right. They're playing for fun. They love it.
Right.
It's the sport. It's like I grew up loving the sport, and then, I get paid to do this? Yeah, I want to keep doing it.
Yeah, but they don't just show up to the game.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
No,
they're putting in the work in the off season.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. They're putting their work in the gym. They're getting their shots up.
Yep.
And we have to do the same.
Yeah.
So that when that time comes to perform, we're performing at the highest level.
I think that's an interesting point too, to keep it kind of aligned with what you're actually doing. So, for example, to not go out and practice landscapes if you're a portrait photographer.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if you enjoy doing both, and I do, right? I like doing landscape work, but I don't nearly do that as much as I do portrait work, right? More of the work, or now that I've been doing more product work, like in my mind, I'm like, well, it's time to practice product work because that's the stuff that I want to book. So I got to make sure that I'm comfortable with it. I'm experienced with it.
You have to put out what you want to get booked for.
Yeah, 100%. And that's just sort of the nature of the business in general.
Right.
And it is an interesting thing when I see photographers, or call them Instagram photographers or Instagrammers, where they'll have one very specific style, and that's it. That's all they photograph, or at least that's all they showcase. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I always wonder, like, is that your business? Like, are you looking to get hired? Because if that is the case, then you're looking to get hired to do one thing, in my mind, right? So I want to kind of be well-versed in those things. And maybe it's that they are portrait. I'm specifically thinking of the Brandon Wolf guy.
Yeah.
He has a very, very specific look. And I'm not saying it's bad, But what I would love to ask him, maybe I should just send him a message like, hey, I'm just kind of curious. Let me pick your brain.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, you want to come on my podcast? I'm kind of a nobody, and you're kind of
you got to shoot your shot
around the world. But ask, and just to kind of say, because I would love to hear that insight as to the strategy with that kind of thing. Yeah, when you think about marketing, when you think about business, all that
But he
stuff.
has an awesome angle too, if you want to think about it like business, because everybody wants to replicate that look.
Oh yeah.
So he has an awesome opportunity to teach
For sure.
and charge
Right.
for what he's doing. You
Right.
know? So,
Hey, you want to know how I do this? Cool.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Absolutely.
So you're doing the film stuff, and kind of back to that point of the medium format versus the 35. So I sent you a message. You posted this 645, and you're talking about medium format. And I'm like, that's the only place where I can see film still being relevant, because
right. In the medium format.
In medium format, like if you're going to shoot film, in my mind, yeah, shoot medium format, because to access that in the digital world, oh, you're paying a lot of money.
Yeah.
You're paying so much money, and it's way more accessible in
Cameras,
film.
lenses, you can pay up to $20,000 medium format cameras.
So much. Yeah. Do you want a down payment on a house or a Hasselblad? It's like, I kind of want a house.
Seriously.
I kind of want a house.
Seriously.
You rent those, right, when you need to. But with film, I imagine you could probably buy a film body. I mean, I have a medium format old Mamiya.
Yeah, I see all these cameras up here.
And it's great. And you can get 120 film, right, fairly affordably. And you can develop that, maybe not as affordably, but now I can shoot medium format, whereas previously I can't. Like, I'm shooting 35 digital, right?
Yep.
But when you compare that to film, 35 film is kind of like, why would I shoot that? And for me, why would I shoot that when I have a 35 digital?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So the medium format is really where you now have a different look entirely.
Absolutely.
And the 645, that's slightly rectangular, right? It's 6 by 4.5, right? 6, what is it? 6 millimeters.
is more like square.
Yeah.
Almost.
Right.
But
Versus the 6 by
6.5,
6. Yeah. So that's really cool that you'll be able to start introducing that.
Yeah.
And that becomes more of an art form.
Absolutely.
Because that's how I see film, is that it's more fine art.
Absolutely.
Versus digital, where it's so funny because it's the exact same thing, right? It's
and that's what I want to kind of get into too. And that's the reason why I purchased it, like think into the future. Like I kind of want to get into like fine art prints.
Yeah.
You know, there's a huge like selling point to fine art prints.
Yeah.
Just because of the longevity of fine art prints.
Yeah.
And I kind of got back into film too, because I found myself not printing my work as much. And you know, film kind of forces you to.
It kind of does.
Print your work.
Which is another
And I started
thing.
spending more time at. I get my stuff developed at Milford Photo.
Love Milford Photo.
Yeah. And I started spending more time there. You know, just dropping film off and going back to pick it up. And you're like, you know, while I'm here, let me get some prints. You know.
Yep.
So I started printing my work a lot more, and that's what I wanted to do. Because you and I, we're both dads. We have kids.
Oh yeah.
I want to give my kids the same thing that I had growing up.
Yes.
Where my dad like printed all our photos because he had to.
Right. That's it. You
Yeah.
didn't see them.
Yeah.
No one's holding them up in a little
right.
kind of slide, like no one, or you're holding up the negatives and trying to figure out what would this picture have looked.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
one did that.
Yeah.
You just didn't do that. You had to print them.
Absolutely.
In order for anyone to see them. So there is something really cool about that. That it, like you said, it kind of forces you to print them, or you're just more inspired, because it is an interesting thing too when you spend this time with this film camera, you get this film stock, and it reproduces beautifully, and you look at it and then you just scan it and then post it on Instagram, and I'm like, well, it's digital.
Yeah.
You just kind of went back around. So having that print makes all that difference, right?
Absolutely.
When Robert came in here, hold on, let me grab it.
No Polaroid.
So Robert came in and he took this Polaroid of me, and
Nice.
he used this he had the same one, and it was funny because when he took it out, and I was like, oh, I have the same camera. I was like, I don't really quite know how to use it.
Yep, I have
and he
Polaroid too.
laughed at me. But this is an old Polaroid, right? And he took a shot, and he took a picture of me, right? It's okay.
Yep.
It's not bad. Hold on, let me get it a little. Although this isn't going to focus, but that's me. And there was something really cool about him taking a picture and going, here.
Right.
And now I have this picture of me
In your hands.
in my hand.
Right away.
There is something, it's so different than holding a phone, right? Because we grew up with not having a phone, right? I know you're a little younger than I am, but I definitely remember a childhood, no phones.
Me too.
Like barely technology,
Me too.
right? And now that you have this, it's sort of like, yeah, I remember this. This is cool. And I think it was last Christmas, the #1 selling item on Amazon was the Fuji Instax instant developed film.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to think about, that kids are interested in this. So there is something really cool about the idea of saying, here's a print.
Yeah, the world is kind of taking a step back, and
funny.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Because of things like this, like Polaroid and the Fujifilm Instax.
Yeah.
Because I love holding an image.
Yeah.
And looking at it.
Like you're saying, that book, sitting down and flipping through the pages. It kind of
feels like going to like an art gallery and like just staring at a photo.
Yeah.
Or staring at a painting, excuse me.
Yeah.
And just trying to figure out like what's going on.
Yeah.
Because I tell people all the time, like video, like a movie, will tell a story. Mm-hmm. But one image like leaves it up to you to determine what that story was.
Right.
So I love just taking a picture and just looking at a picture like this and like, who took this photo? How did they take the photo? Who's in this photo? What's happening in this photo?
Am I wearing any pants?
Exactly.
I don't know why my mind went there. Sorry, Devon.
But yeah. It gets the brain flowing, and you start thinking a lot about this one image.
You're right, and especially when you think about that fine art world. When I think then about street photography, right? You don't know what that moment was. You kind of have this interpretation, and a lot of times it's up to you as the photographer to tell that story properly. Right. But sometimes it is kind of open-ended, and it could be interpreted slightly differently, right?
Yeah. Because like a collection of images can tell a story.
Yes, right. You get a triptych or something like that.
Because that's what a video is. A video is a collection of images.
That's all it is, right?
It's 24 frames per second or 60 frames. But if you just take one frame out of that 60 or out of that 24, it's kind of like you have to determine like what's going on. Right.
What happened before? What's going to happen next?
Exactly.
There is that that kind of area where it's a lot easier with a video to tell that story. It's just way easier to do that. But with a still image, it's a lot harder. And I like that we're talking about that, because I think that's something that's become lost in still imagery. And you know what I've even found too, when we're thinking about film, right, is a lot of people that shoot digitally, or at least, people that I follow on Instagram. I say a lot of people. There's a couple people I follow on Instagram where they'll kind of do a little bit of both, film and digital. And then when I see the film work, it's almost like they've kind of washed away the composition. They've washed away the story. They've washed away balance. They've washed away all these things that they clearly reproduce in their digital work. But in their film work, it's almost like, well, it's the process and it's the medium that makes it art. But in my mind, no, you still need your story. You still need your composition. You still need your color. You still need your light. You still need all those things that you do very well here.
Right.
But why don't you do them here? So it's a slight conundrum for me in my mind to think that, why would you throw that stuff away? If anything, emphasize it more because you have that craft.
I think that there's more of a love of one that's not showing in the other.
Yeah. Oh, clearly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Film, right? Because there's that connection that's happened with you and the camera and the process.
Right.
But the viewer doesn't see that.
Right. Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, if I'm just looking at two images online, this one was shot with film, this one wasn't. But this, as far as I know, could be shot with digital and just processed to look like film.
Right.
But it has a bad composition. Whereas this looks beautiful. I like that image more. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's just an interesting thing when you think about this as art, right? Because that's the whole title of the podcast. Everything is art.
Yeah.
And even when we're talking about telling a story, right? Because I know you've been posting with your fashion work, right? You do that triptych, right?
Right.
Because that tells the story, right? You kind of have this establishing shot. There's more of a medium shot, and then there's a close-up shot, right? Like that's how I always think about when I'm thinking, how do I tell a story? Just like in a movie, just like in a TV show. There's an establishing shot. Boom, you're outside of an office building. Cut to office, or cut to office scene, two people talking. Cut to close-up of phone ringing. Like boom, I know where I am. I know what's happening. Proceed with the dialogue.
Yes.
Like that kind of thing. So you clearly have a conscious effort with that stuff, right?
Yes.
Because fashion is that, I know you do the portraiture, but fashion is more of a focused, pun intended.
So how I got into like fashion photography, I started out as like a menswear fashion blogger.
Oh, word.
So
that's why you're doing all those lay flats and all that stuff. Okay, I've noticed that. Yes. Okay.
So continue. I started out as a menswear fashion blogger. I started working with a lot of brands that started reaching out to me to like send me their products and shoot their products, things like that.
Yeah.
I became a brand ambassador for this menswear monthly subscription service called Box.
Okay.
So they send you a box every month. You get like a tie clip, some socks, 2 like grooming items, which was awesome. Well, let me go back a little bit further. I've always been into fashion.
Yeah.
I got best dressed in middle school, got best dressed in high school.
That's just your thing.
Yeah. I was always into fashion, always into like making sure I looked very nice and neat and clean. And then I started shooting weddings. And then I was like, you know what? I don't have anything to wear to these weddings. Let me start looking up menswear fashion so that I can start dressing appropriately to these events. I was like, I had a suit, but it was like an Easter suit.
Right.
So, let me get some nice suits. Let me start learning how to dress more professionally. And I started like looking up menswear fashion and seeing how these people were curating their images. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? Let me start shooting my images that way.
Yes.
Of myself wearing these menswear fashion items. And then companies started reaching out and they started sending me products.
Cool.
But then it got, I feel like I became like a walking advertisement.
Sure.
and it got old really quick. I was like, you know what? I don't want to be really fake about it and start promoting all these products just because people are sending them to me.
Right.
And I stopped completely like posting like menswear fashion stuff.
Oh, okay.
Still with the love of fashion and still with the love of photography, I was like, how can I incorporate them both? I was like, you know what? Let me explore fashion photography. I hated menswear fashion because of, the realm that it threw me into. Right. So I was like, let me explore like women's fashion. Yeah. And then I started looking into women's fashion. I was like, wow, like women's fashion is amazing because
it's crazy.
A woman can wear sneakers. A woman can wear high heels. Yeah. A woman can wear sandals. A woman can wear a dress. A woman can wear a blazer. Yep. Like it's endless possibilities of what a woman can wear. The norm is changing, now for men. But
sure, of course.
Women, there's so many more possibilities when it comes to fashion.
And when you think fashion, I think people think of women's fashion. Obviously, there is men's fashion, but I think that's what people immediately go to with that thought. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So I got into like women's fashion and women's fashion photography. And then when I focus in on something, I try to focus on what's missing. So I started looking into women's fashion. I'm like, all right, women's fashion. What do I like about women's fashion? I like street style fashion.
Okay. Yep.
I feel like a lot of like high end designers look to street style for inspiration. Yeah. I think any designer looks to street style for inspiration. But I was like, what's missing in street style fashion? And I was like, whenever you see street style fashion, you just see a girl like, she's squatting down posing. Yeah. Or she's leaning up against the wall posing. Yep. Or it's just focused on the clothes. But then I was looking up high fashion and I saw like all these crazy high fashion poses. Yes. So I was like, how can I incorporate like high fashion posing into street style photography?
Oh, cool. Okay.
So I've been trying to combine them both, and that's been like my project with
doing fashion photography. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And I love that that there's a purpose for that. Right. Call it purpose, call it just drive or just goal to say, I have this vision that I want to create. Right. How can I do it? Because I'm sure that there are things that you learn along the way quickly. It's like, okay, this doesn't work well with this, or maybe it's certain fabrics, or maybe it's just, textures with poses, things like that. Because some of those poses start to become abstract, ways that people would never stand. Right. Ever. Right. But it looks cool because now it's just about the shapes. And then how do those shapes kind of complement the apparel, and then how do they correspond and relate to the background that you're using?
Because if someone is just sitting there and they're looking at the image, you can have a beautiful person in the image, and then you can have beautiful clothing, and then you can have beautiful lighting, and then you can have beautiful posing. Mm-hmm. And if you kind of like tie all that in together, it's like, wow, this is a beautiful image. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to create. You know what I mean? I'm trying to create beautiful images, and I'm just trying to incorporate all those things together. Cool. And it's been an awesome like exploration.
I dig that. Yeah, and because then that becomes more of your passion, right? More of your personal passion. So that's going to kind of help fuel and drive you. And then who knows, maybe some of that kind of crosses over into that wedding world. Right. You have a bride who's really down with it and says, hey, let's do some kind of cool stuff now. Yeah. You look dope. He looks dope. Like, let's do this. Absolutely. And make it more than just your sort of typical wedding poses.
Yeah. And I'm trying to, create my own style when it comes to everything.
For sure.
Yeah. Everyone picks up a camera. Everyone can take photos. You have to create your own style. And yes, I'm starting to find what's my. I kind of developed my wedding photography style, and I'm trying to develop my own personal style. Yeah. And I'm trying to kind of separate the two because this is work and this is fun.
Yes.
And I want to still have fun.
Yeah.
while still being able to be a professional.
It's interesting, right? Because that then comes down to branding. Everyone has a brand, or not everyone, but for those that do have a brand, right? You want to sort of separate those. I was talking about that with Moby, where he's Photoplug, but he's also Moby. So it's like, okay, well, you have to kind of have them be the same, but almost they still need to be separate, right? And just explaining to people, or very clearly visually showing people that 9 to 5 is not Devon, right? But they kind of are. But for anyone that doesn't know you personally in your fashion work, they want to look at your wedding work and go, oh, cool, I like this wedding photographer. I want to hire them as a wedding photographer.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't put your fashion work mixed in with that wedding work, because then people will be like, oh, no, I'm not into that.
That's not what
it's
I
like,
came here to see.
No, I could do your wedding. Yeah, we don't have to go crazy with these crazy fashion poses. But it's being able to kind of have those two separated. And there's a challenge in that, right?
And I keep saying that, but that's why I'm glad I established my business first.
Right.
So that when it came time to do like the fun stuff, I can still.
Whatever you want to do, you're still doing that there. Yeah, that's interesting.
And that doesn't affect my professional work. So.
Right. Yeah, because if you look at my feed, you won't see any wedding work on there. I don't put any wedding work on there. Because it doesn't make sense to have that there, because I wouldn't want wedding clients looking at that stuff and then seeing, for example, portraits from like photo meets, things like that, where they'll look at that, or lighting workshops, and they're like, lighting workshops, like I'm gonna hire this guy to take my pictures of my wedding, like what? I don't get that. So there is kind of that difference in kind of keeping that separate. So the other thing I want to talk to you about, like I said, you're the first dad I've had on the podcast, so it's a couple of dads hanging out right now. Yeah, dude. So how the balance, right? Work life, right? You've got a business, you got a family, you've got another little boy on the way, right? So you got two boys. What's your eldest boy's name?
Devon Jr.
Devon Jr. Awesome. So you got Devon Jr. I'm sure you guys are working on names for.
We got one, Malachi.
Malachi. Awesome. That's beautiful. Yeah. So you're going to have a family of 4.
Yes.
And there's that balance of all of that. And I think everyone can relate to balance of whatever it is, your personal life with your professional life. Like I do a lot of stuff outside of what I do photographically. Like tonight, I do a pool league. So I play pool competitively, and I like doing it. There's certain aspects of it, but then it's like, I can't always do that. And sometimes
I'm gonna get a game one day.
Oh, you shoot?
I'm not a professional, but
no, neither am I. But it's just fun. You like shooting? Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I would love to, man. It's so funny that like there's like most sports. I'm not into. I like tennis. Tennis is the only sport that I enjoy playing.
I played 4 sports growing up.
What'd you play?
In high school, I played basketball, football, indoor and outdoor track.
Oh, nice. I always wanted to do track, man.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I was like, I could run pretty fast. Like every time we would do like classroom races, I always won. And I was like, I should do track.
Playing football, it was a requirement for you to run track.
Oh, interesting.
And my freshman year, my first track meet, I qualified for states, and I was like, oh yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, cool, I got this. Yeah. Although that makes sense because it's basically just conditioning for football, right?
Exactly.
Like it's kind
right
of
before like spring training. It's like
you're training for it, right? Yeah. So going back to being a dad, right? Mm-hmm. The balance, right? How have you found that to be challenging?
Not really challenging because we have an awesome support system.
Cool. Family, extended family, things like that. Awesome. Yeah,
our
that's
support
huge.
system is great. My mom, my dad, they love my son so much.
Yeah.
They're always trying to come pick him up, even when we don't want him to go over there. They're like, "Oh, we're coming over right now." I'm like, "Chill out.
Hold on a second.
With my son."
Yeah, we're watching a movie. We're doing something.
Yeah, but with business, I think I'm just trying to buy more time to spend with my family.
For sure.
So
that's the name of the game.
I shoot between like 15 to 20 weddings a year.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to gradually like increase my prices so that I can shoot less weddings. Mm-hmm. And buy more time for my family. And
that makes sense, right? That's sort of a natural progression. Like you have more experience, you have the ability, and as you start to refine more and more and more, right? You have more and more demand. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you can charge a little more and then shoot less. And I think that's the
goal.
Yeah, for anyone that could do that. Mm-hmm. And then the other question I had for you was whether it be Devon Jr. or Malachi.
Yes, sir.
Are you gonna? I don't want to say push. But are you definitely going to introduce the arts to them? Like you have to, right?
Absolutely. I'm kind of doing that already now with my son.
Yeah.
He has like a little like wooden toy camera.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, take my picture. And he's like,
that's cool.
Yeah, and he loves that. But I want to introduce them to everything.
Everything.
And then whatever I find that they are passionate about and what they love, I'm going to help push them in that direction,
right?
100%.
See, it's interesting, right? Because when I think about that right now, this is just straight dad talk, right? It has nothing to do with the arts. This is just like, although parenting is an art, right? So if everything is art, when I think about that, right, I think about my little girl, Scarlett, and I think about what is she going to do? How old is Devon Jr.?
4.
4, okay. Scarlett's 18 months, a little over 18 months. And you start to see them become a little person, right? And then obviously you and your wife influence him. We're influencing her in ways that we don't even realize, right? So naturally she's going to do things that we do just because we do them, right?
And that's how you learn as an infant.
Yes. Like you're not, just the things. And it's like, you look at the things that they do and you're like, oh, that's so cute. And you're like, oh, I get why she's doing that, because she sees us do that. Like they're just little mimics, right? But then you recognize that you have this power, or this, call it power, this ability, right? And this art of showing them the world.
Right.
So then it's like, okay, well, what do I show her? Naturally, I want to show her the things that excite me, right? I want to show you art. I want to show you photography. Like I want to show you video games. Like I want to show you these things that at some point in my life, I was like, this is cool. I want you to see it. But then for me, when I think about, like, I wasn't into sports. Like I didn't, again, tennis, I'm definitely going to show her tennis because I'm like, yo, tennis is dope.
Right.
But then I think about the things that like I never played football, I never played basketball, but I want to make sure she has that experience. Like you might love basketball. So then it's almost like you kind of share that passion because they would be excited about it, or at least that would be my idea. So it's difficult because naturally I'm not excited about basketball. Like I'll watch a basketball game, I know it.
Or what's awesome about being a parent is that it can be vice versa at times too.
They're going to show me stuff.
Like I didn't like reading books at all. My son loves books.
Yeah.
And he always brings me books to read him books.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, like I'm learning to love books, and that's where I get all my knowledge from now. Like
books.
All I do is read.
I see that. Yeah, you've been posting that. Yeah. You share that, here's this book that I'm reading.
I have an awesome reading list. But my son reintroduced me to books, because
that's cool.
Yeah. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I guess that'll naturally happen. And it's more of me just kind of thinking as a dad, and I think to myself, like, what can I do for her? Obviously to encourage her to do things.
Yeah, she's going to do some awesome things.
She's going to do stuff right back. Yeah.
Because she might learn to love something that you never had an interest in, and you're like, man, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
And just because they love it, it makes you love it.
I'm going to love it. Oh yeah, I'm going to love it. Yeah. Like it's just, naturally, because she's excited, she's smiling, cool. I don't care what it is.
Once
like,
I found out my son loves books, it's like, oh man, I'm buying every single book that I can buy just so I can read it to my son.
Yeah, that's cool. So. Yeah, and that's so for me it's obviously showing her life, right? And introducing her to all the things that are awesome. Specifically, again, when I think about art, like that's the one thing that like in my brain just makes sense, like art, right? So I want to make sure that that's conveyed to her, and it's sort of in our blood, my extended family, like artists across the board, all that stuff. So that's there too. But yeah, it'll be exciting to see her sharing those things with me. But what I've been trying to do, you kind of touched back on upon what your dad did, and what my dad did was bombard us with photography, right? So I'm trying to be real sensitive about like how many pictures I take of her. And obviously I want her to be into photography, and I obviously want to capture photos of her, but I don't want her to hate it by the time she's 5, 6 and go, ugh, more of this camera thing.
That can happen like subconsciously. Like I don't think my dad like meant for that to happen.
Of course not. Same. Of course not.
But he was just so excited to watch us grow and watch us grow through pictures. Whenever anyone comes over, like my dad has a picture for
a story that he's telling.
Story. Yeah, exactly. So he's like coming out with like a picture. He's like, remember the time when I was 18 and this happened, blah, blah, blah. So.
And it's cool. I mean, it's so cool. And even when you think as being a wedding photographer, the fact that you're capturing these memories, I'm sure that you've had the email request, hey, so-and-so passed away.
Right.
Can you send us that photo? And the fact that you have the ability to preserve that.
In my questionnaire, one of the questions is there anyone important that you would like a photo with? Yeah. And a lot of times it's like a grandmother or a grandfather that they know might not be here for a long time. Yep. I had someone's grandparent that wasn't even able to make it to the reception, and they wanted a photo with them at the ceremony.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
After the ceremony, obviously. They were able to make it to the ceremony. They weren't going to make it to the reception. But she was in a wheelchair. I think like a year later, she had ended up passing away. And I remember seeing that photo like on their Facebook, and I'm like, man, I'm glad I was able to like
you could provide that.
Right.
That you could preserve that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely, anytime I shoot a wedding, it's always making sure, hey, let's get pictures, grandparents for sure, elderly aunts and uncles, all of that, just because
people that came from out of the country.
Yeah. You want those memories preserved. And the fact that our fathers did that for us, just because they were excited about photography, you know. And the funny thing is, right, when you think about their generation, like they were such a small fraction of people. Their demographic of knowing how to operate a camera. So that's why they became the family photographer, because it's like, I don't know how to use this thing. You do though. So take all the pictures ever. And they kind of, you know, embrace that. And it's really cool. So,
and that was back before phones, when everyone had a phone and every phone had a camera.
Oh yeah, man. No way. Yeah, no way. And now everyone has every single picture, and you know, it's a great thing, but it's also this kind of negative thing. That's a whole, geez, we could do a whole other hour just talking about that. One of the things I do want to do is, and I talked about it when Moby was on, and it's been in the back of my mind, is doing like a round table. Kind of basically setting up a couple microphones, come up with, everyone would come in with a topic, right? 3, maybe 4 people, not more than that, because then it can get overwhelming, but everyone kind of come in with a topic of things to talk about, and like basically the technology, right? Introduction of technology. And everyone knows this conversation, right? That it's this amazing thing, and it's also this really crummy thing. Have you watched the show Black Mirror at all?
I heard about it. I want to get into it.
It's really, and there's some episodes and you watch it. So if you haven't already heard the analogy of comparing, or not analogy, but the comparison of the Twilight Zone. If you know the Twilight Zone. So it's kind of that modern day take of, hey, here are these things, and here's what they could become. So,
which is interesting.
Oh, it's so interesting.
That's why I'm interested to get into it.
There was one episode, not to give spoilers, but there was one episode that basically kind of showcased the world that we live in of likes, that we're kind of driven and based off of these likes, and that it shouldn't be about that. It should just be about, if you want to share something, you share something, and not creating something in the hopes of having a lot of people like it. Or when people say, oh, I'm going to make a viral video. You can't make a viral video. You can make a video that might happen to become viral, but if you say I'm going to make a viral video, that doesn't make any sense. And
I think that has a lot to do with like mental health in today's world.
Oh, for sure. Again, a whole other hour that we could talk about.
There's
the
a lot
psychology.
Of kids depressed because of social media and because of likes. And
right, because some kid posts a picture, he doesn't get a lot of likes. This other kid posts a picture, he's got a whole bunch of likes, so now he's popular and you're not. Oh man, I have.
There's a lot of people on Instagram like depressed about like the algorithm.
And it sucks. Doesn't that suck? And then you want to just like, all I want to say is like, throw away Instagram and just go out and live life. But you kind of almost have to live life through this social media if you want to participate in what is the norm, right? And when you think about pop culture and all that kind of stuff, like I want to know what currently is happening, especially within technology.
And then relevancy, depending on like how many followers you have, like people want to feel like they were remaining relevant.
Right. So they pay for followers. And look at me, I've got 50,000 followers, but they're all fake.
It's sad, man. It's sad.
Yeah, it is.
It's sad.
Yeah, it is. So on that note, let's take some pictures. And like I said, we'll do some portraits, you know, not a long session, but I'll record the session. So for those of you that want to have access to the behind the scenes of our photo session, and then me as I go through the culling process, the retouching process, all of that stuff, you can check out my Patreon, which is Steve Walter. Nope, it's not. It's patreon.com/Steve Walter Photo. Nice. And if you want to just get more info from the website, stevewalterphoto.com/podcast. That's where you can find links if you want to download those from iTunes, SoundCloud. I'm also now on the Google Play Store, so you can find me there. And
it's nice that you can cover all bases with just.
You have to.
This.
Oh, yeah, you have to. And then this is going to be up on YouTube because that's probably where you're watching this. And then I'm on Instagram at Steve Walter Photo. Devon, where can people find you and your stuff?
You can find me at DMinnisCT or at 95 Photography on Instagram or www.95photography.co.
Dope. Cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on and thanks for chatting. And let's go take some pictures.
Awesome.
Dope.